What happens to people when they're too old to work and too young to die? What do we offer them? A time to ripen? A time to rot? Or just a time to escape? In America, the old are being driven from the cities, defeated by the violence and the interests of the young. Today, 9 out of 10 Americans live in cities where there's no room for 3 generations and no peace.
Wake up and live in Sun City for an active new way of life. Wake up and live in Sun City, Mr. Senior Citizen and wife. Don't let retirement get you down. Be active in Sun City, the paradise town. Wake up and live in Sun City for the best years of your life.
Once it was believed old people were happiest in their hometowns, living on amid grandchildren and familiar streets. But now America's moving towards a new lifestyle. These retirement communities hold towns where everyone's old. Several hundred have been formed in the warm, dry air of Florida, California, and here in Arizona, where syncopated widows with blue rinses and 1 foot in the groove can remain physically and socially active and avoid the miseries of seeming unwanted and in the way. In a society that's extended lifespan but not working years, that judges a man by what he does, there's a psychological letdown on retirement. Nobody ever suddenly becomes a Negro or a Jew, but a retired man's a minority overnight. Engine driver or executive, he's always known what he was. Then one morning, suddenly, he's nothing at all. It's an identity crisis we'll all face. So he comes to a freewheeling retirement community, which is like any other neat, prosperous township, except for its hush. There are no children, no dogs, no ice cream chimes, no teenagers, no factories, but there are pavements, which are rare in America, and though retirement seems to mean gardening, the grass here's been replaced by rock lawns, by granite chippings dyed green, for aggressive mowing brought too many heart attacks. Everything's on the level. Along with their isolation from society at large, Sun citizens submit to a regulated discipline. No fence over 6 foot, no caravans, no garden sheds, no eyesores. Sun City grows fast across 10,000 acres of desert just north of Phoenix. 12,000 retired people who must be over 52, and most are 10 to 15 years older. The first house was occupied in 1960, and they're still selling 8 a day. Prefabricated, landscaped, no stairs to worry about, built with an eye on the problems of the old.
These are the new cupboards with the spring-loaded hinges.
Light switches at wheelchair level, electric sockets high, bathroom locks easily pickable.
This has the easiest control that's ever been put on an electric stove for automatic cooking by turning this...
Homes cost from £7,000 to £14,000, with a lot extra for prime sites. But these sharp real estate operators are offering white-haired prospects the most irresistible amenity of all, a few extra years of life.
We sell them Sun City. First of all, we have the climate in our favor. We have the finest climate in the United States right here in the Valley of the Sun.
You could have fooled me.
Well, what we tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if you want to get out of the cold, we have 3 months of heat and 9 months of summer. Now, does that appeal to you? And one thing about the snow, where we come from, like from Pennsylvania, one thing about the heat here, we don't have to shovel it. So that kind of gets a chuckle out of him. And then we find out what he's really here for. Does he like the sun? Does he like to fish? Does he like the outdoors? And this is it, primarily, really.
Now, this is a hard sell.
It's a hard sell. Take it the way you want. We want to know whether he's a buyer. And he'll tell you, they're pretty much convinced, really.
You see, a lot of people might come in thinking this is a sort of philanthropic place where their welfare is going to be cared for and they really haven't got to put down so much money. In fact, it's a business organization.
That's right.
How do you break this to them?
Well, frankly, I just itemize everything. The man says, I've got so much to live on. Perhaps $400 or $500. They'll have to have at least a $400 or $500 a month income to live here. If he's paid off his house, then we can itemize the taxes and everything for him. What electric's going to cost him, natural gas, heat, what he's going to pay for trash, and just about the monthly assessments that he might have, electric, gas, trash, insurance on the dwelling, it comes out to around $65, $75 a month. If his house is paid for, then he can live very nicely here, really.
As I say, it's certainly a hard sell. I mean, when you walk in here, it's almost like a bazaar. You're grabbed, aren't you?
Yes, that's true. The hard sell here is they'll decide whether they like it themselves. All we got to do is encourage them to come here and live, really.
Before you became a salesman here, what were you doing?
I was selling cemetery lots for 15 years. I was in the cemetery business. So you talk about a hard sell business, that was hard sell. Because I told him he had to buy it tonight, or he should buy it, because tomorrow he may not be here, I won't be here. I don't know. I put the fear of God in him, that's
Now, do you put the fear of God into these people?
Well, not as hard as I did in the cemetery business, really. This is pleasant work. I just tell them that I got out of the underground and I went above ground. It's much more pleasant selling them a nice home for retirement to live in for the rest of their lives. So.
The only thing is it's not too far away from the cemetery business, because these are people who are preparing to die, aren't they?
Right. Not necessarily. I'll tell you, we just tell them here in Arizona, it'll add 10 years to their life. There's no question about it. Because I tell them, since you've been here, you look 10 years younger already, and you might live 10 years longer. We gotta peddle that, you know.
Do you have any other ways of pressurizing them into buying?
Well, not really. We don't like to use the word pressurizing. We do get them to, well, I don't know. We don't usually use the word pressurize. I don't know quite what you mean.
Well, and how else would you try to push your homes?
Well, we try to push the community. You know, so many developers in the United States and possibly in other countries sell just a house. We sell what we call a way of life. The recreation facilities that are $20 per year per person, the mini shows that we put on at our 7,500 capacity Sun Bowl. These are ways, if we can keep our residents happy, we feel that we will sell more homes.
Okay, now here as we go down this highway, up to Alabama Avenue is the first part of the city. The streets are named after famous golf courses or famous golf people. We have Hogan, Venturi, and by the way, there was St. Andrews Drive back there. And then we have we have the Hope and Crosby streets up here, but they put them a half a block apart, folks. We didn't want to have any trouble there with Hope and Crosby.
The hard sell is softened by euphemisms. The old are senior citizens, death, if not unthinkable, is at least unspeakable, and the 35 salesmen are counselors.
Okay, now have you all been to the sales office? You have, good. Then I don't have to dwell on that. You know you must have your pink activity ticket from your counselor, and then you sign up for our free and lovely barbecue and afternoon bus tour of the valley. And that's most worthwhile. All right? We had a gentleman, an editor, from our Gazette paper who retired not too long ago. He says to retire is to merely stop doing one thing and start doing something else. Well, we've got all those something elses for you to do right here in Sun City. We have 125 clubs that people have formed themselves. He says this too, and it's most important. Make the most of what you have wherever you go. Go with your whole heart. Keep your eye on what is coming up, not what is slipping by, and don't let your minutes rust away. Well, we've got it all fixed for you, so you don't do any rusting out here.
When you're laughing, the sun comes shining through.
It may be because they've come to Arizona and burnt their home bridges behind them, or because the clever corporation which runs the place spends so much time telling them how contented they are. But most of the residents do seem to have brainwashed themselves into a regulation holiday camp happy attitude. A way of life concerned only with self-indulgence. But they're retired, so why not, when everything's so organized and jolly?
We have one lady who had never been horseback riding before, and so she decided to go down to the Sun City Saddle Club and ride. So the fellow asked her whether she wanted a saddle with or without a horn, and she looked around and she said, well, there doesn't seem to be much traffic, so I'll take one without a horn.
Sun citizens see themselves outcasts who've discovered how to live without bothering anyone or being bothered. All they want is freedom from grandchildren and noise, from intellectual challenge and responsibility. There's some, like this printer retired after working 47 years in Milwaukee, like an easy part-time occupation which will provide
fun, meeting people, just what I'm doing this afternoon.
But do you need the money?
Nah.
Do you find that if you don't take a job when you've retired, that you get a bit dull?
Oh, definitely. That I do find. You get bored.
You stagnate.
That's right. You get, well, that's the same thing as bored. Do you know what being bored is?
Yes.
And I'm not trying to be facetious. I mean, I'm serious. I'm sincere.
Yes.
But you get bored. You get bored with everything. You find that time lays heavy on your hands. You don't know what to do with yourself. For that reason, I put a lawn in the back of my house so that I have something to do on it. And I keep busy on that part of the time, and the rest of the time I work here 2 days a week, and then I have fun. My wife and I just enjoy ourselves.
Sun citizens believe if they keep their eye on the ball, keep active, keep that ever-loving blood circulating, they'll keep alive. And they may well be right. For a start, the place is built around 4 18-hole golf courses. There's no sitting on benches here and waiting for death. The weekly schedule of events, like the program of some hyperactive cruise ship, is daunting. There's painting and pottery, handbell ringing and silvercraft and a male chorus, camera clubs, knitting clubs, duplicate bridge and leathercraft. There's arts and crafts, poker and throwing horseshoes. There's bowling and swimming and bridge, softball and country dancing, and lapidary, which sends some of them back to a voluntary workbench. And for the mildly energetic, a group called the Pedal Pushers. Usually when you retire, you're alone. But here in Sun City, everyone's retired, and life's dedicated to the formula that activity plus friendliness equals happiness. And there's no doubt that a common fear of loneliness does generate concern and instant friendliness. Since old ladies are considerably tougher than old men, there's the usual sexual imbalance. Tonight at the Dutch Treat Club there are, despite its inviting name, 190 women and only 10 men. The Sun City Singles Club is composed entirely of women. In the whole community, there are said to be 1,900 widows, all trying to play their cards right and chasing a few creaky widowers, sometimes right into the other world. Men don't last long here if they're single. They go, one way or the other. But despite such fun and games and shuffleboard, it's not all euphoria in the desert. There's heat and homesickness, the advances of arthritis, and what they'd call the visitations of the Dark Angel.
I had major surgery in the spring, so it's necessitated my running back and forth to the Phoenix area to see my doctors, which would be kind of bad if I didn't have a brother to take me. Hit that thing, baby.
Sun citizens have escaped from traffic and cold weather, from politics and boredom. But their twilight haze of planned pleasure is overshadowed by one main preoccupation.
Lovely hospital. They broke ground for the hospital. And we'll have many more doctors here and better staffing. Get over there, knock that out of there. Hit it, babe, and brush it up. Still got an 8. Still got an 8.
The other concerns of the aged considered by their homeowners association. The price of life on a fixed pension, the need to feel secure.
Men offering police protection at $18 a year are still trying to get the necessary number. As to the ambulance service, we are
But discussion always returns to the inescapable.
We have been in communication with a firm offering helicopter ambulance services.
The end of the road here is like the end of all our roads, except that you could mistake Sunland for Funland or a garish motel. Sun City's cemetery is a discreet distance away across the desert. Each grave, reserved in advance, has its vase of plastic flowers. Before they reach their Sunlands, America's 20 million over 65s average 13 years of retirement. Primitive cultures revered the old as guardians of traditional wisdom. But in our society, money and power have moved to the young. And retirement means the elderly redundants are elbowed aside as winters grow colder and friends fewer, a dwindling into long, dull days, waiting for this. For Americans, retirement communities are a sort of solution. But are they admirable or awful? They have many critics, many styles. At California's Laguna Hills, guards stand at the gates of a walled city. The 12,000 residents of this leisure world seem to feel the need for defense. Anyone who enters through the exit, who goes in surreptitiously, retires. And the old people inside, in voluntary and high-priced isolation, are they protected or are they prisoners? Depends, I suppose, on which side of the wall you're on and how you feel about these compounds for the aged.
They are corralling the senior citizens. They are placing them, I wouldn't use the word concentration camp exactly, but they are placing them in a position where their value, their knowledge is lost to our community.
The president of the Los Angeles Senior Citizens Association dislikes such segregation.
They're perpetuating the generation gap, and they're increasing it by pulling away from their responsibility.
Running away.
Running away. They're being drawn away by ease, shall we say, the ease of living, a very selfish way of living. I criticize this because I feel that we are losing valuable experience. I feel that our society needs this experience. This is a balancing power, shall we say, in our society today. We need a control. If the senior citizen had remained in the homes, as China used to do this, keep the elders in the home, today we would not have this campus disorder. Because grandma and grandpa would have said, son, daughter, granddaughter, you can't do this. That's all there is to it. And they would have listened. But today, grandpa and grandma have been relegated out into some senior citizen facility someplace.
There's a lot of criticism of these retirement colonies. Gerontologists suggest that old people should remain in the fabric of society and not come out to these and wait for death in a place like this.
Well, this is true. There has been criticism of a retirement community. The funny part about this is the same gerontologists a long time back, 10 years ago, we'll say, were saying, you know, we ought to do something for retirees. They're lonesome, they're inactive, they're not doing anything. And then a developer like the web company came along and developed Sun City, and now we have them saying, well, you know, they get into a retirement community and they retrogress. But you know, the funny thing about this is I haven't seen one gerontologist here in this community taking a look at it. They criticize it, and frankly, the general public has been somewhat critical. They say, well, those old people get out into a community, they forget about society, they don't want to pay taxes. Of course, I can only say to that they are living on a fixed income, and so it is only natural that they're watching their dollars because they have to live on those dollars for the rest of their days. So there has been criticism, and this is why we've had these Sun Bowl shows. We try to draw young people out, young families, to see Sun City, to see the way of life, so that they'll tell their grandparents about it and will not be so critical of it. So,
of course, the criticism must be in part that this is a commercial enterprise and not a philanthropic gesture.
It's a commercial venture, certainly. We are not a governmental operation. We are in business to make a profit like any other industry or company.
Isn't it, though, rather depressing to have a cemetery-orientated society, which is what you've got here?
Well, we might consider it so. A younger generation or middle generation, the people who live here accept these things, accept death much more readily, possibly, than the middle generation does.
You see, these colonies for the elderly are a revolutionary step. We don't have them in my country.
No.
You're wholeheartedly in favor, I guess.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Do you see no disadvantage?
Not a thing, not a bit. I don't know of a thing that could be a disadvantage.
Perhaps that you ought to stay to keep a balance of society, that this worship of the young can reach...
The young are taking over. The old have nothing to say.
So you've retreated. You've given in.
That's right. That's just about the answer to it. They're taking over. The vandalism in the area where I come from is so bad it scares you out. Coming out here and leaving the area that I have lived in for all my life, there's a feeling of relaxation, a feeling of fear that has left me. To come into an area where everybody is very congenial, very neighborly, very close. In fact, the whole neighborhood, they're close to each other, and no children. It's something that was an unusual experience, and I fell in love with it, although I had to come out here and spend 3 months before I was sure that I would like it.
Is this because you've had unfortunate experience, or because you find youth in general unsympathetic?
I think it's true wherever you go. You pick up the newspaper, the same things are going on in every university and every college. In fact, now it's spreading to the high schools. I wouldn't be surprised if it spread to the elementary schools in the next few years. It seems to me, and I don't hesitate to say this, I honestly believe that there's communism in back of this whole picture. Now, I believe that. I just don't believe that these kids get these ideas all by themselves. Where do they get them from? Where do they get these crazy ideas?
Well, because it's a permissive society now, you see. That's not communist inspired.
What started it?
Well, we started it, I suppose.
Well, of course, you could argue that all night long, but I don't believe that, because I went back, and we've discussed this with friends of mine, the days when we went through high school and what we did, and the days we went through college and what we did for recreation, for instance, and worked our way through and all the rest of it. They don't do those things today. Everything's being given to them on a platter. In grade schools and in high schools, for that matter, supervised recreation. In fact, in the high school areas all over the country, I can safely say that recreation has taken precedence over education. More money is being spent on recreation than they're spending on education. The field houses, the gymnasiums, the swimming pools, the stadiums that they're building for high schools are ridiculous. That isn't what those children are there for. They're there to learn something. And if you go on back to the reading, writing, and arithmetic, I think that's where they belong.
You don't think, Doctor, that as you get older, you're getting less tolerant?
No, I've known this for 30 years. I'm not that old that I can't remember my middle age. No, I've been fighting back long enough. I'm giving up.
The American Medical Association expects we'll soon enjoy a lifespan of 120 years. So here, 35 million old-timers will face 60 years of retirement. That's more than half a lifetime. Here's one solution of what to do about the old folks at home.